President Biden set to bestow the Medal of Freedom just hours from now. And Hillary Clinton will be honored for her service to the country as Secretary of State, as well as Democratic mega donor George Soros.
Because the only reason they ever did it was so they could try to call him a convicted felon during the election. Take a hard look at who you're electing.
In this video today, Joe Biden is issuing the Presidential Medal of Freedom to George Soros and Hillary Clinton. Trump issues a furious message to the judge in his sentencing hearing. And an ex-Green Beret who knows the Las Vegas suspect speaks out. These stories and more in this video today, but let's start with what Trump had to say. Let's just say Trump woke up this morning and he's on one, okay? He wrote, "I never falsified business records. It is a fake made-up charge by a corrupt judge who's just doing the work of the Biden-Harris Justice Department, an attack on their political opponent, me. He created a case where there was none. Keeps a gag order on me so that I can't talk about how crooked he is. The fake news knows all about it, but they refuse to talk. He may be the most conflicted judge in New York State history." The accountant testified with total corroboration that the records were perfectly and totally above board. Let me just stop really quick, because I don't know if you guys know this. I'm assuming you do, though, is that by him writing down the expense of paying obviously his lawyer, Michael Cohen, he actually did the right thing technically, okay? But again, they had to create this case in a way that they can get him on the 34 felony counts. And also we know that the judge clearly, in my opinion, manipulated the jury, but that's a whole nother thing. A legal expense was called on the books a legal expense. There was nothing else it could have been called. This was so-called falsifying of records. I was hiding nothing. Everything was out in the open for all to see. Every legal scholar of note said there is no case against me. The judge should be disbarred. This is why people and companies are fleeing New York, a corrupt court system. In another crooked New York case, another corrupt judge overturned 5 times on my case alone, and the most overturned judge in New York valued Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida at $18 million. That's how you know there's something weird going on, right? When it is worth 50 to 100 times that amount. And then when we have also in New York, the woman I've never met, celebrity photo lines from 30 years ago don't count, who was awarded almost $100 million. A totally out of control Trump-hating judge presided. The Biden-Harris DOJ was involved directly or indirectly in each of these cases. I won against deranged Jack Smith. Now, guys, remember, when I always hear about that case with E. Jean Carroll, I always think of this. When there was Johnny Depp and his defamation case that he won against Amber Heard, there was clear video footage, clear witness accounts, actual pictures, police, stories where the police was called. But in this defamation case of Trump, there was none of that. And so we know there was something politically motivated here, because why would they spend all these resources to go after him after this amount of years? You think if they really wanted to nail him, they would have did it 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's because we know that he's registered as a Republican and he challenged the establishment. And of course, let's not forget the judge donated to Joe Biden's campaign, and the judge's daughter worked for the Kamala Harris campaign. What more information do you need? Is that not a conflict of interest? Because if it isn't, then I don't know what is. Now, Congressman Tom Cotton had this to say about this entire case and the sentencing. He said the entire case against President Trump was a farce. 34 felonies for correctly categorizing illegal payment in a district where killers walk free. But perhaps most outrageous, Judge Juan Merchant is a Joe Biden donor. If that is not a conflict, nothing is. That's exactly what I was just saying, guys. And again, guys, we know this stuff was all made up. It was a huge distraction. It was an attempt to stop Trump from winning the election. It only backfired, as I've stated since the beginning, that when you obsess over someone at this type of level, you become that person. And as I've always said, when you obsess over someone like that so much, you become the very thing that you're trying to fight against, that is. Now, here's Scott Jennings on CNN, just ripping this entire story. Check it out.
Should Trump do anything about it?
Well, I mean, I guess he could show up and continue to show what this case was all about in the first place. And that is, it was for a political talking point. This case should have never been brought. It was brought by a partisan prosecutor. If Donald Trump weren't Donald Trump and he weren't running for president, this case would never have been charged with felonies this way. This complete and total sham. It's a kangaroo court. Of course he's not going to be punished for it, because the only reason they ever did it was so they could try to call him a convicted felon during the election, which they of course did. And then the American people soundly rejected this naked partisan politics. If you're watching New York City news right now, you got people being burned on the subway, folks running around with all kinds of violence in their past and not in jail, and the criminal justice system is being used on Donald Trump. Take a hard look at who you're electing. It's Alvin Bragg and this judge. These are the kinds of people, and their priorities are totally misplaced.
What else can you say about that? I mean, that's exactly what's going on here. You got people being burned alive on the subway. You got people being prosecuted for defending people on the subway. You got migrant crime running rampant. You got these terrible gangs that have migrated to New York City causing issues, right? But you're so focused on a businessman that built the New York skyline. How does that make sense exactly? Oh, I'll tell you how it makes sense. Only if you see things from the eyes of a leftist. Let us show you an example of that. Listen to her take.
Well, there are 34 convictions against now President-elect Trump, right? And that's not the focus simply on the Alvin Bragg and the New York case does not cover the entire history of impunity that Donald Trump has gotten away with, specifically when it came to intervention in the election. Now, the law, as you all know, does not move quickly, and it certainly did not move quickly in Donald Trump's case, despite the fact that he was impeached twice. So there are many records here that Donald Trump set. I just doubt that these are the ones that he really wanted to be setting at this point. Be that as may, he is going to have to do some community service. He's going to be the next president of the United States and have to take all of this.
That is community service. You're right about that.
The attitude of these individuals are that they are proud to call President Trump a convicted felon. They're proud to say that he was impeached twice, even though he wasn't fully impeached. So that's interesting, but okay. The bottom line is what? They love placing labels on Trump, and they focus on his character. They focus on things that you would see in high school, name calling. What they're not focused on, which is probably the most important thing of their job description, is the American people. And the only way they justify it is because, oh, we're trying to protect democracy. Okay. Yeah, your guys' way of protecting democracy is destroying it, because clearly you guys didn't follow any rules. If we look at the January 6th Select Committee and all the stuff that went down there that was corrupt. Oh, and then let's throw in the president pardoning his son Hunter, not just for one crime, but for the last 10 years. And then the photos of Hunter's Chinese business partners. But hey, you know what? Nothing to see there, right? And just like there's nothing to see with this next story, where President Biden is now going to issue the Presidential Freedom Medal to George Soros and Hillary Clinton.
What more can you tell us about those who will be honored today?
Well, Danny, President Biden set to bestow the Medal of Freedom just hours from now. And as you mentioned, this is the nation's highest civilian honor. And you might remember back in 2017, one that then President Obama surprised his Vice President Joe Biden with. But now it's Biden's turn, and he will bestow that honor to 19 individuals who the White House says are great leaders who have made America a better place. It's really a wide-ranging list of 19 people. Just some of the highlights. Hillary Clinton will be honored for her service to the country as Secretary of State, and also for being the first female presidential candidate of a major party.
So essentially, Hillary Clinton is getting an award for being corrupt, a failure as the Secretary of State, and also being a loser as it pertains to the presidential election. I mean, that's what I'm hearing here. I get the other names, right? Messi, Denzel Washington. I love that. But to put her on there and George Soros, it once again confirms just how deep this corruption goes and how much they're so out of touch.
There will be U2 frontman Bono, recognized for his advocacy against AIDS and poverty. There's actor Michael J. Fox, who will be honored for his Parkinson's disease advocacy. Designer Ralph Lauren, who has outfitted the First Lady on so many occasions. There's also Chef Jose Andres, a Biden supporter who has also been at the forefront of global food aid. Vogue editor-in-chief Anna Wintour, also a Biden supporter who hosted multiple campaign fundraisers fundraisers on his behalf. Some other notable honorees include soccer great Lionel Messi, actor Denzel Washington, conservationist Jane Goodall, the billionaire philanthropist David Rubenstein, as well as Democratic mega donor George Soros, Bill Nye the Science Guy, basketball great Magic Johnson. And Biden will also award a few posthumous medals of freedom today, including one that will go to businessman George Romney, obviously the father of Senator Mitt Romney, who was a Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and also the governor of Michigan, as well as to Robert F. Kennedy, the late Attorney General, and notably the father of incoming nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services in the Trump administration, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Daniel Amara.
So, of course, people are not liking this announcement. Here's Bill Ackman saying this: "Don't you find it fundamentally wrong that our country's highest honors are used as rewards for the biggest supporters of the political party in charge?" A very great point there. Elon Musk responded to that post by saying, yes, the Medal of Freedom should not be for sale. Another user in the comment section brought up a great point. New York Times got the Pulitzer for lying to the public for Trump Russiagate. People get rewarded with $1 million book deals for lying about Trump and Supreme Court justices. And Defiant L has actually asked a great question here. I thought they hated billionaires. That's a good point. And another user on X by the name of Amuse wrote this: George Soros has funneled over $32 billion to Democrats and their causes through his foundation. Meanwhile, Democrats are worried about the $250 million Elon Musk spent to help Republicans. Call me after Elon dumps $32 billion into the GOP, and then we could talk. So here's what Charlie Kirk had to say. So Joe Biden is giving the Presidential Medal of Freedom to a guy who funded race Marxist prosecutors across the country that led to a historic rise in violent crime and death in Democrat-run cities, and a warmonger who lied about Benghazi, murdered Muammar Gaddafi, turned Libya into a failed state, and whose campaign funded the Russia hoax, which resulted in years of national turmoil and the unjust impeachment of a sitting U.S. president. Got it. Then Elon Musk responded to that by saying sullying the medal. And then Charlie Kirk said a cynical slap in the face to Americans, added to a very long list. And of course, there are people that are celebrating this, like the failed individual by the name of Stacey Abrams said this: well deserved. Congratulations to George Soros with profound gratitude for his contributions to voting rights, economic opportunity, and his dogged insistence that a just society reflects diversity, promote equity, and practice inclusion. American values he champions in word and deed. Guys, that entire post is a bunch of garbage. It was tough even reading that. And I kind of feel like every person that's getting a medal at this point, the political individuals, these are the same individuals that instead of giving them a medal, they actually probably need a pardon. And Speaker Mike Johnson said this: Biden is ending his term in disgrace. In his final weeks at the White House, he has done what? 1, pardon his son for crimes Biden insisted never happened, and despite repeatedly saying he wouldn't. 2, granted clemency to murderers and rapists, a slap in the face for families of their victims. And 3, celebrated shamed politicians like Liz Cheney and Hillary Clinton who lied to the American people and did everything they could to try to take down President Trump. January 20th can't come soon enough. Now, this takes us to this story about the Green Beret who is responsible for that Trump Tower bombing that happened in Las Vegas. And here is another Green Beret by the name of Tim Kennedy who went on Fox News. He knows Michael and had some words about what he thought about this entire situation. Let's listen to that.
Anything, and I realize you know, obviously you didn't stay in touch with him over the years, but anything that you remember particularly about his personality that strikes you as particularly kind of hard to wrap your brain around?
Yeah, Charlie, I mean, start to finish, categorically, the guy was a great dude. He, he was he was a good shooter. He was a good communicator. There's 5-6 events that we did in this reality competition show, mostly based around soldier skills. And in every instance, he was seemingly a great person. None of this checks out. On the Special Forces side, he was first a Special Forces communications sergeant, and then an intelligence sergeant, and then ultimately an 18 Zulu. So he went through kind of every single one of the checks and balances. He was a talented Green Beret, and sounds like everybody liked to work with him. So none of this makes sense, and it's so heartbreaking. I truly hope that this is a wake up call for service members to make sure that we're checking in with each other right now. But it's so heart wrenching.
Now, once again, these details, the facts that we know at this point, it's not providing any level of clarity. I mean, we almost become even more confused with more information. We just heard from someone who knew him, served with him, knows the type of credibility that he had as a Green Beret. So to do something like this, it just doesn't add up. And of course, there are now this whole back and forth on X between Jack Pozo and Sean Ryan, because remember, Sean Ryan's the guy who aired the manifesto, went through every single sentence about it. And I guess some people didn't like it and was trying to call him out. And so, of course, I read this too yesterday where Jack said, spoke with an Army friend he served with, Matthew Levesberger in Afghanistan, says the email story about war crimes in 2019 is totally made up, that they didn't even have strike authority like he's talking about. And then Sean Ryan actually responded and said, weren't you an intel guy? Geez. And then he posted the link that showed justifying why that statement might be true. And then Jack actually responded and said, you linked to a UN report that doesn't even match in terms of data, was disputed by the Trump admin and cites Taliban interviews as source. Happy to get you in touch with an Army buddy who was on the deployment. Guess you never heard of vetting information. Geez. And of course, there are people lashing out at Jack, and so he had to defend himself. He says, I'm not trying to make it personal at all. It's just about figuring out what happened. And the only thing I would actually add to this entire back and forth is this. President-elect Trump went on to Sean Ryan's podcast. So I think I'm going to probably give him the benefit of the doubt before I give Jack. I don't think Jack is wrong for questioning the credibility of that email or manifesto, call it whatever you want. But again, we arrive at the same conclusion where we are about all of this, which is we don't really know anything, right? Because a lot of the data and the facts just, they don't make sense. Now it's time for you guys to answer a question in the comment section below. Do you believe the fact that now Biden issuing the Presidential Freedom Medal to George Soros and Hillary Clinton has actually watered down the medal? In fact, it probably doesn't mean much anymore because of the individuals that have received it. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section below. Now, we started off the video today about Trump and how he woke up this morning on one and ripping the judge for requiring him to be sentenced on January 10th. Now, when that story first broke, we reacted to it, and there's additional stories at that point in time that you might want to take a look at. So if you guys want to check out that video and more stories from yesterday, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.